Okay, we're going to continue our study of Baha'u'llah's book, the Kitab-i-Iqan, the Book of Certitude, in which he talks a great deal about the relationships between the different religions, the different prophets and messengers who have founded those religions, whom he calls manifestations of God, and the 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 mysterious or mystical meanings of some of the abstruse writings, which many people have taken literally because they could not unravel their spiritual meanings. What Baha'u'llah does in this book is he shows us how to find the spiritual meanings of otherwise impossible to understand kind of fantastical, superstitious ways of understanding. Many people do that. They just revert to believing in the literal meanings of things that many thinking people of science, people of knowledge, can't accept. Well, Baha'u'llah resolves this problem by explaining the metaphorical meanings of things. And more than just explaining the metaphorical meanings of things, he gives us a window into how to do this ourselves. And I found it very potent, and I've been able to unlock the doors of many things that I otherwise did not understand through meditation and prayer and contemplation. So we're starting on page 95, and here he's been talking, what Baha'u'llah has been talking about in this section is how God is intrinsically unknowable. How it's not possible to comprehend or to communicate directly with or to describe God because God is so beyond. And if I like to say this practically every time, if we think about how we can't even really understand an atom, much less the universe, how do we possibly think that we would be able to come anywhere near close to understanding that which created it all? So Baha'u'llah has been explaining that in order to resolve this issue of human beings not being able to have direct access to the unknowable essence, which is the prime mover and the prime cause, that there has been created a realm of being which is called manifestations of God. So this realm of being, and I explain this every time, so if you've been watching, bear with me. This realm of being, it has to do with certain kingdoms. You have the kingdom of the mineral kingdom, which has the power of cohesion, the plant kingdom, which adds to the power of cohesion, the power of growth, the animal kingdom, which also has the power of the senses, and the human kingdom, which has the rational soul, which encompasses so much, but particularly encompasses not only the ability to think and create vast dominions, but the power of moral choice. So each kingdom subsumes that which is which is beneath it, and possibly each lower kingdom gives intimations of that, or incipient development of that which is above it. So above the human kingdom lies the kingdom of the manifestations of God. I think that's also called the Holy Spirit. From my study of Baha'u'llah's writings, I've come to the conclusion that that realm of the manifestations is the realm of the Holy Spirit. And it's that Holy Spirit that animates these manifestations in everything they say and do. So they have perfect knowledge, perfect wisdom, perfect goodness, perfect understanding, perfect compassion, perfect truth, etc., etc. Whereas we humans are limited in that which we manifest. So now Baha'u'llah is going to talk about the relationships between the manifestations themselves. So who would that be? That would be the founder of the world's religions, such as Jesus, Moses, Muhammad, Baha'u'llah, and many others from all the cultures of the world, indigenous and non-indigenous, written and oral, that have graced humanity from age to age with their wisdom and knowledge, so that we human beings would not be left alone and would always have access to that which will uplift our lives and the lives of the human race. So let's see what Baha'u'llah says here in paragraph 110 on page 95. He says, I'm going to start with a sentence or two from the previous paragraph to give it context. He's talking about the manifestations of God. He says, human tongue can never befittingly sing their praise, and human speech can never unfold their mystery, that they're beyond us. They're beyond our comprehension. We can learn from them. We can grow in them, but we can't encompass them. It's not part of our DNA, so to speak. These tabernacles of holiness, tabernacles means divine place of residence. So where these beings of holiness reside, these primal mirrors, which reflect the light of unfading glory, are but expressions of Him who is the invisible of the invisibles. So these manifestations of God are expressions of God, which is invisible. By the revelations of these gems of divine virtue, all the names and attributes of God, such as knowledge and power, sovereignty and dominion, mercy and wisdom, glory, bounty, and grace, are made manifest. The way that we attribute these qualities to God is through the manifestations. We see that they manifest these qualities. Now he goes on. He says, these attributes of God are not and have never been vouchsafed specially unto certain prophets and withheld from others. Now that's a real challenge to the religions, because all the religions claim that their messenger, their divine revelator, is the end all and the be all, and this is saying, no way. The attributes of God have never been vouchsafed unto certain prophets and withheld from others. Wow. He's really challenging us here with a new thought. Let's see what he says. Nay, all the prophets of God, and I should explain that when Baha'u'llah uses the word prophets, he uses prophets with a capital P and prophets with a small p. So the prophets with a small p are like Isaiah and Jeremiah and Daniel, who prophesied but who were not the founders of divine systems. And the prophets with the capital P are the founders of the divine systems of spirituality and religion that human beings are familiar with today. Again, whether they're from indigenous or non-indigenous cultures, and whether they're from oral traditions or written traditions, they're all one. Let's see what he says about it. Nay, all the prophets of God, his well-favored, his holy and chosen messengers, are without exception the bearers of his names and the embodiments of his attributes. All the prophets of God reflect these names: knowledge and power, sovereignty and dominion, mercy and wisdom, glory, bounty, and grace. And they are the embodiments, they're the living symbols of these qualities of God. They only differ in the intensity of their revelation and the comparative potency of their light. Even as he hath revealed some of the apostles, with a capital A, we have cause to excel the others. Okay, so Intrinsically, these founders of religions are no different from each other. However, their revelations are relatively intense or less intense. So, for instance, we see that, well, I think he's going to talk about it. Yeah, so we see that Christianity and Islam and, and Buddhism have become very, very widely spread in the world, whereas Judaism is not as widely spread. That has to do, what he's saying here is the intensity of their revelation and the comparative potency of their light. Even as he hath revealed some of the apostles, we have cause to excel the others. That's a quote from the Quran. It hath therefore become manifest and evident that within the tabernacles of these prophets and chosen ones of God, the light of his infinite names and exalted attributes hath been reflected, even though the light of some of these attributes may or may not be outwardly revealed from these luminous temples to the eyes of men. So he's saying that all the founders of the world's divine religions have all of the qualities that we attribute to God. Even though sometimes some of these qualities aren't revealed to the eyes of human beings. Now, I can think, having been raised in the Jewish faith, I can think of a couple of examples where this is so. For instance, Moses never claimed to be a manifestation of God. That came with Jesus. Jesus said that he was the Son of God. And he said that no one could come to God except through him. And that, in doing so, Jesus was revealing a divine principle that had not been revealed before. And presumably the reason it hadn't been revealed before was because humanity wasn't ready. They were not ready to take on and grapple with the concept of the manifestation of God. So Jesus brought it to us. He called himself the Son of God. And my understanding as a Baha'i is what that means is he perfectly reflected the qualities that human beings are to aspire to. He perfectly reflected knowledge and goodness and power and love. These are the things that we as human beings aspire to. We cannot become Jesus. According to the Baha'i teachings, we cannot become the same as Jesus, even though he said, you will do greater things than I have done. There are various interpretations for that that I understand within the Baha'i context that make a lot of sense to me. But I'm not going to bring that in because I don't want to change the direction of our conversation right now. Muhammad, for instance, never claimed that station, and neither did Moses. Now let's think about the difference between the situation of Muhammad and Moses versus the situation of Jesus. Very interesting, because Muhammad and Moses both came to desert cultures which openly practiced infanticide as a quote-unquote spiritual practice. That is how degraded those cultures were. And they also practiced ritual prostitution. So they came to cultures in Islam in the culture that Muhammad came to, it was a regular practice to bury your firstborn daughter alive. They came to cultures that were so backward and so brutal and so degraded, and they had to gradually lead their followers to a more advanced, more enlightened ideas. these cultures were not ready to understand the very challenging concept of the manifestation of God. Jesus came to a relatively more advanced culture, so he could bring this idea, and so did Baha'u'llah. And he could reinforce and explain this idea of the perfection of the manifestation and the role of the manifestation as the divine link between God and man. So when we plug a light into a light socket, the light goes on. When we plug our heart and our prayers consciously and direct them toward the manifestation of God, be it Jesus or Moses or Muhammad or Baha'u'llah or White Buffalo Calf Woman or the Peacemaker or Quetzalcoatl or whoever, when we direct our prayers, it increases in potency because we're connecting with the divine intercessor. He says that a certain attribute of God have not been outwardly manifested by these essences of detachment, doth in no wise imply that they who are the day springs of God's attributes and the treasuries of his holy name did not actually possess it. So it's saying the same was true of Moses. The same was true of Muhammad. The same was true of Abraham. The same was true of the Bab. It was true of Jesus Christ. And this is where we have to get over our sense of separation and superiority to other people. We cannot heal the world until we come to terms with our own need to feel superior. And sometimes we do that, hide behind that, by hiding behind the current interpretations of our religions. We have to let that go. We have to cling to truth, not to the false ways in which those who have arrogated to themselves the responsibility of explaining the divine teachings have erred and faltered. We have to detach ourselves from that. And many people are doing that. That's why so many people are leaving the religions, because of that very fact. The fact that the religions try to promote themselves above other ones and other people. We have to let that go. And that's what Baha'u'llah is telling us here. Therefore, these illuminated souls, these beauteous countenances, countenance being your face, have each and every one of them been endowed with all the attributes of God, such as sovereignty, dominion, and the like, even though to outward seeming they be shorn of all earthly majesty. To every discerning eye, this is evident and manifest. It requireth neither proof nor evidence. So he's saying, to anybody who really looks for truth, beyond the superstitions and the sayings of human beings, sees that the religions are basically trying to teach the same thing. Yes, they come to different cultures at different times, and they adapt their messages to those cultures, but basically they're teaching the same thing. Okay, well, I want to thank you if you did tune in for listening. I very much invite comments and questions. I would so love to have them. I wish you grace and beauty and harmony and love and compassion and sincerity and truthfulness. Ya Baha'u'llah, O thou